Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Market Whispers. Today, we're going to discuss whether or not Bitcoin is pretty much done for. There's been a lot of discussions whether or not Bitcoin has topped. A lot of people believing the cycle is over. And there's a couple reasons for that, of course. One is people still believing in that 4-year cycle, October being its expiration date. And as of right now, because of the correction we are living through, um, it's pretty much favoring that stance currently. The second thing is if we look into the chart, you can see below in the RSI, we've had a massive bearish divergence. So a lot of people mixing those two viewpoints, they are wholeheartedly believing that the cycle is over. And these previous weeks on the weekly time frame, we've actually also had some weekly candles below the 50 EMA, which is, for the most part, it usually is a huge alert as a concern. So we're going to dive in and discuss those things and why I believe it's pretty much just noise as of right now. So let's get into it. First things first, like I said, the correction that we currently are experiencing within the top of 126 has left us below the 50 EMA in these previous weeks. Now, when you go back to previous cycles, right, let's just go back to, we can go back into history of Bitcoin, but let's just go to this one, to the most recent one. 2017, you can see that if you look all the way on its uptrend, you can see that the 21 EMA was completely respected. It was never once broken. So you can see that once we actually broke the 21 EMA, that was a huge alert that we had topped. If you go back to previous cycles back here, for the 2012, you can see that it still pretty much respected that up until the time we actually topped. Now, when we go back even to this 2019 to 2020, you can see that we had the broken 21 EMA pretty much alerting us that a big crash was coming. All to say that previously, this has held a lot of weight to know that something concerning is coming. Now, where we stand currently in this cycle, you can see that this entire uptrend has been completely different. From the moment we had that bullish cross, you can see that back in September 2023, we've had these weekly candles breaking the 50 EMA before it had its uptrend. Then, in this correction here, we also broke the 21 EMA and then broke its previous all-time high again. And then it happened again. So it's just been nonstop disrespecting these moving averages, which is why you can't point this and say that this is a huge concern because of how many times it's been disrespected. So when we look at the 2-week, on the other hand, this obviously is a different story because on the 2-week, we've actually been respecting it. And currently with this 2-week candle, it's very important that we get back into this 21 EMA. If not, that's going to put us in the bearish category because we will, for the first time, break the 21 EMA, which will then, for me at least, be something that will bring concern for me because of this entire band being respected, this entire run, and then all of a sudden we break it, then it's an alert of concern, as opposed to the weekly, as I showed you, it's a different story. Now, the other thing is, when you look at the weekly, you also see that we've had this bearish divergence starting all the way from March 2024. Now, this is why I say it's very important to not just see things on an isolated viewpoint. Because if you want to say that we have a bearish divergence, you also have to take account that we have a hidden bullish divergence. There's a couple things here. The last time we had a hidden bullish divergence, let's just divide this into two sectors. These two sections here was a hidden bullish divergence before breaking its previous all-time high. And currently where we stand, we are at the same position with a hidden bullish divergence, both in the RSI and price action. Meaning, if we were to look left, this would pretty much indicate that we should be breaking previous all-time high again. So now when we take that into account, you also need to figure out whether or not we've broken price action. Because if you're going to argue and say for certain that we're in a bear market, there has to be a lot of angles favoring that. And as right now, for the Bitcoin RSI, I consider this not a bearish indication because of the hidden bullish divergence. If anything, I'm considering this neutral because we have both. Second thing is the EMAs. I'm also considering this neutral because it's not holding a lot of weight on the weekly for obvious reasons I've just mentioned. Now, like I said, on the 2-week, if we actually do break it below the 21 EMA with this 2-week candle that we're currently in, then I would put that in the bearish category that we can finally say for certain the concerning alert is there for that category. Now, another thing is when we look at price action, you can see that we have yet broken, sorry, that's a fib. We have yet broken its price structure. We still sit above the, I believe it's a 78, 79 range. If we break below this range here, then we can finally say that we're no longer in a bullish uptrend. But as of right now, we do not have that. So jumping into assumption that we've changed directions and the trend is a bear trend is way too soon to say that for this reason. Now, the reason why I would believe that it is likely to go into this area here of testing this previous all-time high is because, again, when you look back to 2017, you will see that before we went into an uptrend, after breaking its previous all-time high, you had that in the exact same structure. Let me make this straight. You can see that we retested this level here, had also bearish divergence before it continued up. This fractal wise is what I see that we're currently in. Because if you look to where we currently stand, it's pretty much identical. We have the bearish divergence, and then we have the retest of its previous all-time high coming into fruition right here. And that's just one aspect, right? There's another aspect, there's actually two more aspects that I favors this perspective. And I'll go into why I believe why that's also possible. So just to mention that those points that people are highlighting that are pretty much of an indication that the cycle's in, it's over, for me at least, is not showing that. I think, if anything, we're at a neutral standpoint where the bearish divergence currently has been neutralized with the hidden bullish divergence. Price action is still bullish. Like I mentioned, it hasn't broken. Now, I know I've already discussed this, and I know how to calculate mathematically where the pre-distribution phase is going to be and the distribution phase for each cycle is. Now, our pre-distribution zone is within the 135 zone and the 82,000. We are still, if you see right now, you can still see that we're still in that zone, and that has yet been invalidated. Which means that just within these mathematical calculations, it's pretty much highlighting that we still have a breakup to a new all-time high. However, what's chilling about this is when you look both at the comparison of the S&P 500 and the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin, as well as the NASDAQ versus Bitcoin, you will see some chilling things in the sense that the same algorithm that's being used within the S&P is also being used within Bitcoin as well, and NASDAQ. Now, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because if you can see, and I completely studied this, not just within price action, but within the RSI, and it's so chilling of how identical this is. And currently where we're standing is within this range here with this last flush before its uptrend. Now, if you look at this, you will see that every time this algorithm corrected in this section here, it went towards its previous all-time high. You're not going to really see this because it's highlighted in the yellow, but as you can see here, it touched its previous all-time high level. And it did the same thing for the S&P 500. Let me zoom in for you. It went in and it touched its previous all-time high before it broke its current all-time high. So, and you also had weekly candles like we currently do. So this is why I believe, just based on this fractal comparison, because it's incredibly chilling of how identical it is, this is why I believe we're going to go into reason because of the algorithm that this is indicating that has happened. So with that in mind, right, this comparison of the fractal and the comparison of 2017 showing you how it did the exact same thing before it exploded up. It went in and it retested the previous all-time high level. Those are two angles right there that are showing you that this is possible and that it's also not the cycle top, just because this is showing you it's happened before and it's nothing new. So I just want to highlight that I know things look very scary. I know things look like it's pretty much over. But when you put everything together and you start putting the puzzle pieces all on top of each other, you start seeing its picture that it's yet not completed. Because not only is my mathematical still intact, we haven't even broken below the PD zone. That in itself is already showing us that we're going to a new all-time yet been broken. Below its 78 level to even consider that we're in a bearish trend, because that's another foolish thing that they say, the trend is your friend, when the trend hasn't even been broken. So if anything, it's a bullish trend as we stand. On-chain data is pretty much showing you that it's exhausted during sell pressure. So there's so many things favoring the fact that we are not yet done. When you look at these two indicators, the CCI, I like using this on the 2-week because usually this is showing you when the sell pressure has been exhausted. This doesn't necessarily mean that the bottom is in. It's just telling you that it's pretty much at its peak exhaustion. You can experience a bullish divergence, as you can see here, where it peaked here, and you can still have another bottom come in for a hidden bullish divergence to print in the RSI, but overall, you're close to the bottom. And sure enough, we have this here. So yes, we're currently in the exhaustion phase of cell pressure, but because of that fractal comparison and retesting its previous all-time high, to me, it shows me that we're still, I still believe we're still not done within this correction. I still believe that we still have a little bit more to go before we go into the trend. Now, I can be wrong in the sense that, and the only reason why I think there is a possibility I can be wrong of going lower is because, like I said, this 2-week candle here is very important for us to touch. But whether or not we touch it, I still strongly would believe that we are getting, and that the RSI really touched was in this level where it barely touches previous all-time high. And then when you look at the monthly, it never really hit its exhaustion, and never in its history has Bitcoin topped without hitting its exhaustion in the RSI. And as you can see here, it never did. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is this indicator here. As you can see, when it goes into the blue zone, it's time to be concerned. We're nowhere near that. The CCI, as I mentioned, the last time it was actually exhausted was at this level here. But as where we stand now, it's actually telling us the opposite, that we're close to bottoming and moving up. So I still believe the cycle's not done. I still believe we're gonna, even though I currently in a short time, like in the shorter time frame, I still believe that we will see touching between that 73 to 68K level because of what I showed you here. The common denominator in all this, from what I'm personally seeing, is breaking previous all-time high. And we will have, in my opinion, we will have 2 milestones, which would be the 150K level and then the cycle top, which in my perspective is anywhere between 180 to 197. So I just wanted to let you guys know this is what I'm personally seeing. This is what my stance is. I am totally fine with being wrong, but this is where I'm fully committed in seeing until I see something giving me more of a, how do I say this, a more weight to believe that the cycle's over. I'm sticking with this as of now. And I hope you guys do your own research and you guys just don't look at isolated views, because these markets right now that we're currently in, it's not just a one angle thing. You have to have a lot of layers to pretty much come into a conclusion. So that's it for now. I hope everyone's having a beautiful week. I know for us Americans, we're just finishing up the holidays, and I hope you guys had a beautiful Thanksgiving with your family. But just know that your patience will be rewarded.